You know, we see these things almost every day, and we probably don't even think twice about them. But what if I told you that this one simple tool is actually at the very heart of how we figure out some of the most complicated stuff happening in our world today?
I mean, really, just stop and think about it for a second. How would you even begin to measure something as complex as an AI's political bias or a doctor's empathy? These things feel, well, they feel like you can't measure them, like they're just feelings. Turns out, that's not really the case.
The answer is the good old questionnaire. Yep, just a simple list of questions. It turns out this is one of the most powerful tools we have for getting to the bottom of everything, from how an AI thinks to how a human feels.
And really, there's no better place to see this in action right now than with AI. I mean, it's everywhere. Researchers, developers, they're all using surveys to figure out what this technology is actually doing to us and to our world. And the kinds of questions they're asking, it's huge. We're talking about everything from, hey students, how are you using ChatGPT for homework? All the way to, how is this tech impacting our creativity? They're even trying to measure, get this, an AI's ability to show empathy. Wild, right?
And this is what's so cool about it. It shows you just how flexible this whole idea is. So in one corner, you've got researchers literally giving political quizzes to ChatGPT to see what it spits out. But in the other corner, you have actual human experts, doctors in this case, using a simple rating scale to judge the AI's responses. Two totally different angles, but they're both using the exact same basic tool, the questionnaire.
And we're not just talking about small-scale stuff. This is happening in a big way. Take one study, for example. Researchers surveyed 256 university students in Ecuador, just to get a real, solid picture of how they're using ChatGPT for school. So this isn't just a few people's opinions. We're talking about real, hard data.
Okay, so to get even more precise, researchers often turn to these standardized tools, like something called the User Experience Questionnaire, or UEQ for short. The easiest way to think about it is like a ready-made survey kit. It's already been tested and validated, and it's specifically designed to measure how you, the user, really feel about a product or a website.
And this is where it gets really powerful. Check this out. This is a perfect example of the kind of clear-cut results you can get. So in one study, the UEQ showed that a website was pretty attractive and efficient. People liked that. But see that third bar? Novelty scored below average. Now that is super specific feedback you can actually do something with, and it all came from a questionnaire.
Okay, but it's not all about AI, right? Let's zoom out for a sec, because this same exact method is being used to understand, well, pretty much everything else in our world.
You want to know if people are actually going to ride in self-driving cars? Well, how do you figure that out? You ask them. You use a questionnaire to see what they think and what they plan to do. Or think back to the pandemic. Questionnaires were absolutely critical. They let researchers track symptoms and see how the virus was spreading across huge numbers of people, pretty much in real time. And then, let's switch gears completely. You've got sociologists trying to understand cultural shifts, right? So they'll use surveys to ask things like, hey, Gen Z, what's the deal with marriage? Are your views different? It gives them a snapshot of what's changing.
Over in education, big deal surveys like PISA are used to tackle massive questions, like, why are so many teachers quitting?
Even for something like driving. There's a driver behavior questionnaire that helps connect the habits people say they have with their actual risk of getting into an accident. So yeah, you can see it's like this Swiss Army knife for understanding just about anything.
So, how does this all actually work? It might look easy on the surface, just asking a few questions, but believe me, there's a real science to making a good survey. You know, one you can trust. Let's peek behind the curtain.
Basically, it boils down to three main steps. First, you've got to create the questions, and this part is key. They have to be super clear and not leading in any way. And what's wild is that some researchers are now even using AI to help design better questions. Next, you got to get it out there to people, using simple stuff like Google Forms. And finally, you take all those answers and you do the analysis. That's where you turn a bunch of responses into real, meaningful insights.
And the info you get back really comes in two flavors. You have qualitative data, that's the wordy stuff from open-ended questions like, so, tell me about your experience. You get rich stories. Then you have quantitative data. That's all about the numbers. It usually comes from things like a Likert scale, where you rate this from 1 to 4.
But you have to be careful. Getting this right is absolutely crucial. One study pointed out that if you make common mistakes when you're designing your survey, it can totally mess up your results. Bottom line, if you ask a bad question, you're going to get a bad answer. It's that simple.
So what's the big takeaway here? We've seen how this seemingly simple tool can help us unpack some really complex stuff.
Whether we're talking about the cutting edge of AI or the basics of public health, the humble questionnaire is still one of our most fundamental tools for just figuring things out.
It's basically a bridge, right? It lets us take all these fuzzy, abstract ideas, what we think, how we feel, what we plan to do, and turn them into something structured, something we can actually measure and learn from.
At the end of the day, it's what gives us the data we need to try and make sense of this incredibly complex, constantly changing world we live in. And that kind of brings us full circle. The real power here isn't just in the questionnaire itself. It's in the questions we decide to ask. So that leaves us with one final thought. What's next? What are the big questions we need to start asking?